All right.
Well, it looks like Steve's here somewhere, and of course, we're sitting here with Nick, the big boss, and everything. By the way, I was missing you the last 2 days. I know me and Steve held it down on
I saw
Monday, and
that.
I do see him in backstage. And then I know, he was out there hanging out at the beach. I'm jealous of him. And then
Is that what he's
yesterday, I
doing?
had to hang and do it all alone, but I did have the company of Shaquille and
I saw.
Sasha, and of course, we
I
got
was
into
watching.
heated debates about critical race theory and everything else. So I know that you keep in touch and that you're watching even when
Yeah.
you're
I was
not in
actually
here.
watching you and Shaquille on when I was in Costco. I was going, oh wow, he's got him and Shaquille one-on-one. I wonder how this is going.
Yeah, it was like a boxing match. You're a good analogy, a one-on-one boxing match and all of that. But I think I held my own. But Shaquille might have me by a little bit, and of course he's got age on his side, so he might be a little quicker. But I think I did all right in terms of maintaining my own. But he may disagree. And there's Steve.
I thought Steve was at the beach.
Yeah, Steve's still at the beach.
Oh, you're at the beach, Steve?
Yeah, good morning, guys. So
I thought either he's at the beach or he's in Geneva with Joe Biden, one or the other.
Well, I wanted to just I'll do my monologue late today, but I wanted to just chime in real quickly and say hi and I wanted to one idea that I had was we haven't talked a lot about the New York mayor's race. Sorry, I'm getting my lighting going here. Sorry, can you see me?
Oh yeah, we can see you, and you're not backlit too bad, but looks like you're having a good time there at the beach.
Yes. Well,
Right.
I apologize, folks. Normally I'm in a suit and everything, but this is a little informal, a little cash,
Mhm.
But real quickly, I want to talk about Geneva. I'm only here for a few minutes, and we're heading back. But the bottom line is, let's talk about the New York City mayor's race. I think it's very interesting. New York has a ranking system, which Alaska will be following in this federal elections next year, and I think a few other states have done that as well. And the winner take all system is, for example, New York City mayor. You have Andrew Yang and a few other candidates at the top, but the way they do it in New York is they rank it, and so the first choice and second choice and third choice. And so what this means is that if the person, for example, let's say Alaska, there's a Gross and Murkowski, or let's look at the election of Nader and Gore. If Nader won the second number of votes, and rather than just a winner take all system where that would actually hurt the front runner, that 20% of votes or whatever would go to Al Gore, and he would have had a significant advantage in winning the election. The same thing could be said for Alaska. So like in this New York race, it's really up. I think his name is Eric Adams, and then you've got Andrew Yang and a few others. But what they're saying is vote for your top choices. They're all 10% of the polls, because you don't vote for those as number one, you're just hurting the other candidate. But this winner take all system doesn't really work, because let's say, for example, Nader got 20% and he's got a big movement. Typically in the United States, our third party candidates that have momentum, they just become spoilers. So this happened with Ross Perot. This happened with Nader. So I wanted to throw that out there, and then maybe we talk a little bit about Geneva. I wish I was a fly on the wall with the meeting with Putin.
Yeah.
I could just imagine. It reminds me of a scene of Clear and Present Danger. Remember? Oh no, Hunt for Red October. When remember that movie at the end where they're negotiating, and he goes, "Yeah."
Well, it's good that we do talk about it, because we do rebroadcast on International News, which is a nice social media site. We can give them a plug, and we also rebroadcast to a couple other world news sites. So they're always interested in what's going on internationally. And Joe Biden meeting with Putin is obviously going to take the center stage today in terms of the international news, I would say. It's interesting about the New York race. I had no idea that that's how they did it. They have a really screwy way of doing it. Usually it's vote for one candidate.
Yeah, and the interesting thing I was going to ask Steve, and I don't know whether he thought about it, but you mentioned Andrew Yang. Andrew Yang is actually in fourth place. The second place person right now is Catherine Garcia, and apparently the front runners in that race, which is Eric Adams and Catherine Garcia, were at each other's throats. But that's used to the politics.
I thought when Andrew Yang got in, it was just a no-brainer, but it just shows you that sometimes, maybe he's just not meant to be a politician, I mean, now my biggest fear is if he doesn't win, he went from being, I could have seen Andrew Yang going to the
presidential candidate to
a perennial candidate that doesn't win. No one's taking him seriously. is a very wealthy guy, very smart guy. As an Asian American, I thought, oh, it'd be great to have the first Asian American mayor of New York City, but it just may not be working out for him, right? And
Yeah. Well, but
but
the thing is, politics is really funny because if you looked at a lot of the politicians, Richard Nixon, a lot of them, even Ronald Reagan, they lost races. In other words, it's not like, hey, they got in and they just won. Usually, they get beat up a lot before they, before they hold their own. So, this could be just another, as they would say, lesson for Andrew Yang when it comes to experience. But he was a presidential candidate. Now it looks like even being the mayor of New York is tough. But I was doing some research on the New York City area as an economy. That tri-state area has about 1.7 trillion. It's almost equal to, it would be one of the top 10 economies in the world if it was its own country. And when I say the tri-state area, I'm talking about New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, that whole area. I didn't know it was that big, but it is really that big. And when it comes to economy, Texas, if it was a country, would be the 10th largest economy in the world, and California would be the 5th largest economy in the world. So what we have in the United States, and that's the reason when your friend Shaquille comes on, Mark, always remind him we are the world's largest economy. Which is true. I mean, our economy is absolutely
yeah,
huge.
New York City is great. So I think I wanted to bring
Yeah,
that up because I think it's an interesting topic. Let's follow the New York
right.
race. But I want to explain to our viewers what a winner-take-all system is, and could
Yeah,
be a good precursor for other states looking at this. So
right.
for even our own state of North Carolina, would it be interesting in legislative races where
Yeah,
people could put their top candidates? So it's not this winner-take-all system where you've got people in gerrymandered districts where they're only
sure.
Democrat or only Republican. They hold the majorities. Nothing changes, right?
Right.
And before I wrap up, I'm sorry I just miss you guys so much. You're like my family.
Yeah.
I feel
Well,
incomplete when I don't see your faces anymore.
when I came on, I was going, you know what? Of all the programming that we do at IBM TV, that this is the hardest one to do because it goes on every day. We don't. Most of them, Steve, are weeklies. As a matter of fact, a new weekly I just saw, and I was asking Ankit and Gwen about it, is Barbara Smith, and I think they said, well, Mark Lee got Barbara Smith on. I never saw her. She is such a talent,
Tell
Mark.
you.
Okay,
Yes.
I
Yeah,
don't know where I
and
watched her and I
and
was going like, wow, she's got a great show. She
and I
is
just
such a talent. I've actually rebroadcast her already on LinkedIn. I haven't put her on the Facebook sites because I didn't even know she was broadcasting the Barbara Smith show. But Mark, congratulations if you found that talent. Was that one of your finds?
That was one of my finds.
Wow. Okay. And her only thing that I see that she goes on a lot is Amy Goodman's Democracy Now, which
Right.
I met Amy years ago at a PBS conference. I didn't know she had 283 million views, 283 million views on her Democracy Now. The problem I have with Democracy Now, and I would, if I had met with Amy, I'd talk about it. It's centered on her, and she doesn't have a team. In other words, the team is her. And I would have a real hard conversation with you. You got to expand your team rather than it's Amy and no one else. But it's a free world, I guess, for the most part. She
right.
can do what she wants.
So
Free,
it
free
was
country. But I think it was very limiting. Yeah,
and
yes, Pete.
And
no, no,
and
no. And
but
I just we're working on getting guests. So this has been sort of with summer and everyone
Yeah,
traveling.
right.
But
Yeah,
I'm going to be changing the format. So every week we're going to be bringing guests. So I'm reaching out to
right.
Scott Levitan. We're going to be bringing politicians on, figures to
Sweet.
talk about federal state issues, and I
Yeah.
want to get Alec Ross on and want to get
Wow,
that guy.
Alex Ross would be a big one because
Yeah,
for people that do know, will know about him and his book, The Industries of the Futures, which I think would be a great thing,
yeah,
great thing to discuss. But
oh
in
no,
term,
and by the way,
yeah,
Nick, I don't know whether you were watching the shows yesterday on our
I
yesterday
was
stage
watching you
with
with
you.
Shaquille. That was
No, I know
fun.
you were watching me and Shaquille, but I don't
Yeah.
know if you were watching on Monday. But we had the pleasure of having on the online. Well, no, that's on Wednesday. But we had the pleasure of having on Mullins a couple of folks. But we had a guy with
Mhm.
a ticket agency. We also had a some folks that are working with the bourbon company out of Durham. But one of the partners
Right.
is actually an ESPN producer, so he
Oh,
gave us
really?
some
Wow.
stories about his days with um, Magic Johnson and with
Yeah.
definitely with Kobe and others because he's been out there in LA. So he gave us some insight into that. And we also had Miss Dunn. So later on,
Oh,
I
wow.
think it was 8 days away. So about a week from now, she will be running for Miss North Carolina, and she will then be
Really?
going hopefully for Miss America. So Maya
Wow.
Bryant is actually a longtime family friend. Her mother actually used to be the main secretary at the Carolina Theater. So Maya
Wow.
was on, and definitely even had her sash on, her sachet or whatever they call that thing on as well. And it was great her talking about the stereotypes and some of the things that go on. Because apparently, what I did not know, and I don't know if you knew this, but in terms of ladies out there, the Miss America contest is apparently one of the largest scholarship organizations that exists because they are actually considered a scholarship organization because they give a lot of that money to
Yeah,
those
they
young
do.
ladies to go to school and everything.
Right.
But I don't think that I
Yeah.
was aware that it was actually a scholarship organization.
Wow. No, I
Yeah.
didn't I didn't know either, but they do a lot of good things. But
Well,
I'm pretty hot on Barbara Smith because of this reason, Mark. Okay, what's the difference between her and Oprah? Because she's really good in front of a camera. I'm just letting you know. The difference between her and Oprah is about $3 billion. That's about
Yep,
it. In
that's
other words,
true.
the thing is, and some of it is just serendipity, happenstance. Oprah was in the industry a long time. She worked her way through this stuff like that, and they get opportunities that you can't get. In other words, she was able to cash on opportunities. You can have somebody just as talented, and this is a Barbara Smith, just as talented
yeah.
as Oprah, but she wasn't at the right place at the right time. I hate to say that. If she was at the right place at the right time, she would be Oprah. I'm serious, but she
Absolutely.
was not, and so she's Barbara Smith, but she's really,
So,
really a great talent. And what she can do, I mean, I'm hoping to do is work and bring her what I call upstream because she
Oh
does
yeah.
have a lot of talent in front of the camera. The show was good. She had a good guest. I mean, I was very impressed. And I wouldn't BS you, Mark. I mean, in other
No,
words,
no,
I don't,
that's not. Yeah,
because
that's not
I
even.
also tell people they're
tomorrow we have a
horrible,
good
like
guest on
Simon Cowell.
fatherhood. Tomorrow we have a good guest on fatherhood.
Oh yeah, for Father's Day.
Yeah,
Okay.
a father's conference, and we'll
Yeah.
be bringing our guests in. Mark and I will bring on the guests. And as I wrap up today, the dessert topic. Here's our quick dessert topic, and then we'll do a closeout. Uh, Raleigh has delayed their elections. Get this to November 2022. And somebody asked me why. So let me
Why?
explain what's happening here. Because the census data was late, their system is a district system where in Raleigh, you have to live in that district to vote, except for the mayor's race, which is all at large.
Mhm.
Towns like us, Morrisville, we're moving on with their elections. Cary's moving on with their elections. But the census data has gotten in so late. But they're going to wait. And there's some people are going, wait a minute, this is really nice for these politicians because now the mayor of Raleigh has a whole extra year now, Marianne Baldwin, which I
Right.
think is going to make it even harder for someone to come in. But they must have legitimate reasons. But Raleigh's elections will be postponed till 2022 November, which I was quite surprised
Wow.
about.
And I actually live in the city of Raleigh. And for our international viewers who don't know where Raleigh is, believe it or not, it's in North Carolina. And they all know where North Carolina is. So I always thought that's pretty funny because when I say that we broadcast out of Raleigh, Durham, they go, "Where is it?" And it's in North Carolina. Oh, I know where North Carolina is. Don't ask me why people would know North Carolina but not Raleigh, but it is what it
Absolutely.
is out there in international land. I thought
Well,
it's
Mark,
pretty
I'm
funny.
going to take off. I just a quick sum up of the Geneva of the summit. So a lot done. I think the first takeaway from the summit is the promise by the G7 of 1 billion doses of the vaccine in the
Yeah.
next year, with President Biden saying at least 500 million. It looks like continued efforts to unify the allies against not only the pandemic adversary, but Russia and China. And we'll find out more about the Russia meeting today, although President Biden didn't really give us a lot of details. He just said that
Mhm.
he's going to hold Putin accountable for
Yeah.
things that have been going on, and that I don't know what that means, but I wish I was there. And then climate change, and then tomorrow we might talk a little bit about border control. This
Mhm.
Okay.
continued effort of, and I was on WRAL yesterday with Gail Herder on WPTF, and
Mhm.
we were talking about the fact that Kamala Harris, her strategy is similar to the Obama strategy in that we want to increase the strength of democratic institutions by investing in economic development money to lift up these Central American countries, provide money to help workers. But at the end of the day, there has to be a change to stop the migration coming in at such aggressive rate. So you've got migration and you've got the root causes of migration. And I've been
Mhm.
saying this time and time again. I think it requires a foreign policy shift for the United States to
Sure.
really focus on Central America. So this is the first foreign policy test for Biden as we emerge from the pandemic. Although the variant is still very dangerous, the Delta variant, and the president still encouraging everyone to get vaccinated. It doesn't look like he's going to hit the 70% mark by July 4th, but
Mhm.
get your shot. And yeah, we've hit a plateau, and it's just people aren't, wanting to get the people that don't want to get vaccinated don't want to get vaccinated. The danger is they can get the Delta variant, right?
Right. Yeah.
And I want to go back to the Washington Duke Inn and meet Nick Valadiva and Mark Lee.
Hey,
So
I'm
I'm glad I got that.
I'm good for that. And there's another person I'd like you to meet. I'm scheduled a meeting with him, Salman Al-Azhar. He's a professor at Duke University,
Okay.
and he's been on our shows before. And he's actually built over 100 startups. I mean, seriously.
Oh, wow.
So he's like I'll try to get also a luncheon with him. So we're going to make Raleigh-Durham the hub of worldwide television, like Atlanta was when CNN came out. I don't know if you know that, but Atlanta was not on the map. Then CNN came out. Then everywhere in the world they heard about Atlanta because from world headquarters CNN. So
That's where
Raleigh
we are.
has potential. So we're going to see
Oh,
what we can
Raleigh's
do.
got a lot of potentials. I definitely remember
Guys,
seeing
thank you.
in under Ted Turner, and Ted Turner did a
Right.
great job of bringing Atlanta to its forefront. I would argue that Tyler Perry has continued that with his film empire and everything. So definitely, we're seeing Atlanta have some.
When you speak of Tyler Perry, I've been going to his studio website because we may be renting some of the studios to produce some of our shows. So, and he's got great, I know where his studios are in College Park. So
And
we're
we
going
miss
to work on
Sasha
that.
Starr. Hopefully Sasha will be back. I don't know where he is. He hasn't been
Sasha has he's got his Investing with Sasha coming up at 1:00 today. So
Yeah, he's probably getting it all prepared and everything like that.
he
And I
is.
know Shaquille actually told me that he had to go and was thinking he might not pop in because his dog is racing. So he's got his big race
He's
with
got
his
dog racing
Greyhound.
today.
So
Yeah.
he's actually got that going on. I
He
think this
won
weekend.
he won the Australian dog race and made $1 million
Guys,
off that. So
sorry for the surprise visit,
Right.
but I think it was a good
no problem.
visit.
Yeah.
And I played the game. I got in
Glad
the
to
game,
have you
played
here.
a round or two, and I'm out.
Right. All right. Yeah.
No problem.
We'll get together another Waduk now that we can get together. Yes, Waduk.
See you tomorrow morning.
All right. We'll see you.
We'll see you tomorrow morning when you're back in place and everything, back in the office and all of that. One of the things that you brought up, Nick, and I was just curious to see what you had to say about it. And actually, it's something that I think that maybe even Steve brought up as well, is this whole concept of opening it up and the money that we're losing. He was talking about the Raleigh race. And, there's a major international event. It might be here in North Carolina, but it is considered an international event called the National Black Theater Festival. And they also decided to move till August of 2022 because of what was going on, and they felt that they could not produce it effectively, safely, and all of that. But on the flip side of that, here in Durham, our Festival of the Eno, which is more of a state festival, but it still draws a lot of folks, and I would argue that it has some international audience, definitely decided to go ahead and they're going to do a hybrid event. So I think one of the days will be at one of my workplaces, and that'll be the virtual part, which will be recorded at Haytime. But the other 2 days will actually be at the state park because I was actually invited to come and be one of the MCs, and I've decided that I probably will go ahead and do that on Sunday the 4th. But they are capping it out at like 7,000 because I think that's half of what the usual crowd is, because the usual crowd is probably in the 15 to 20,000 range and everything. So they're capping it out at like 7,000 per day. But they did, after talking to the medical officials and Duke and doing some other calls and everything, decide that it was safe to do it as long as they made sure that folks were vaccinated, that were taking part, and as long as they made sure that those that weren't were masked up and did some other things that were going to be part of the security and all of that. So it'll be a major event, and Greg Bell did decide, along with his boss, to go ahead with that. So it's going to be interesting to see because, like I said, that's two contrasting examples. In one case, we've got folks that are going straight ahead and going to do it in 2 weeks. On the other hand, we've got folks that are waiting a year.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. You see that with the Olympics, they're going ahead, but I think contractually they have to,
Right.
reluctantly. And the other thing I noticed, I saw it in the Black Business Network television. Tell us a little bit about that. I watched some of the shows, and I thought it's a pretty
Yeah,
good
my friend
idea.
Eric Kelly does that event. He's done it now
Really?
for a while, but he's got his Black Business Expos that he tries to do on
Right.
a regular basis. And it's basically Black thought leaders, and they come out and they
Sure.
talk about what's going on in the community. There were some amazing thought leaders. Some of them even taught business lessons from sources that you would not believe, Nick. Like I said, there's
Right.
one lady that does her business explanations and her business coaching, but she does it from the perception of using the pom poms because she was, I think, at one point a cheerleader. And there was also a gentleman that decided to teach lessons about business. And I was laughing when he did it, but it actually made sense. He was teaching lessons from Dr. Seuss. So he's actually
Really?
teaching
Yeah.
lessons from Dr. Seuss. So he was
Right.
getting business lessons that he learned. And he even admitted that when he got the book as a child, he was not thinking about the business lessons. But as he's now a grown adult, probably in his 30s or 40s, he's found life lessons like, be authentic, be true to yourself, and a number of other things that he could get from basically a children's book. So I found that fascinating that he was finding these true basic business principles out of a children's book. But yeah,
Mhm.
but there were some more serious folks. Nikki Dougherty is a veteran, military veteran, and actually I had her on the show on Monday. But she does a lot of stuff around military justice, and her and Kim would get along because she definitely talks about some of the things that go on even in domestic violence and things of that with some of our military people. So she's
Right.
definitely a thought leader as well. So it's basically like 100+ thought leaders from around the country trying to give examples of thought and all of that. So that's what that was about. And also, definitely, it was an amazing event.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, yeah, if you have somebody who's involved in the Black Business Network, I'd like to get them on Media Monday.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
We had Eric Michael E. Gerber on
Mhm.
earlier this week, who wrote the E Myth, which was pretty good. But we've brought in people that run these, so I call them social media television networks.
Right, right.
It's kind of a new phenom, and it looks like they have a nice social media network. And so
There is
things like
actually a woman that I met that is actually doing something similar to what we are doing, and I'm hoping to get her on. And if I get her
okay,
on, I'm actually going to bring her on with you. But there's a young
yeah,
lady on that I met towards the latter part of it named Lotus Riche. She is out of
mm,
Atlanta, and I think her, or maybe she's out of Chicago, but I know
right,
her partner is definitely out of Chicago. But they have something called News You Can Use. So it's similar to
right,
what we're doing, and it's also similar to what Paul is doing with his Good News Network. But it's basically
hmm
where they come on. I want to say they come on daily, and they basically give like news reports, and that's news
right,
reports across society and all of that. They do
yeah,
one-on-one interviews and all of that. So she's definitely created something similar to what we're doing and everything. And then you were talking about Barbara and her guest. That
yeah,
guest that you saw yesterday was Bruce George, who actually about 5 years ago started something called the Genius is Common movement. And what Genius is
right,
Common
right,
movement is basically this whole concept of, we don't want to diss the folks that are in Mensa or the folks that are in these different other organizations that are whatever you might want to call it, the super smart, the 1% in terms of
right,
brains, and
right,
not the
yeah,
1% in terms
yeah,
of money. But that if we think about it, we've all got something that we're talented at. So that's
right,
what the Genius is Common movement is basically like. You might not be a brain genius, but your genius might be playing the piano. Your
right,
genius might be being a barber. Your genius might be
right,
running a restaurant. Or your genius might be this or that. So he's got like
sure,
I think something
yeah,
like 28 or 30 ambassadors that are out there that basically talk about what their genius is, including some major stars. Because I know he has Bill Duke on there. He's got
mhm,
Nikki Giovanni, who of course is a well-known poet, kind of along the same lines and a contemporary of Maya Angelou. But he also had Antonio Fargas, and Antonio Fargas, if you will remember, was Huggy Bear. So Huggy Bear was on there talking
really,
about what his genius was, and apparently
right,
his acting and some of the other things. But yes, Huggy Bear did, because he had people doing like 30-second spots, or in some cases almost like 3-minute spots and all of that. So it was fascinating hearing this Genius is Common movement. I did not know it was as old as it is, because I think he started it in somewhere between 2014 to 2016. But as he put it, and I have not seen any counter argument, he's thinking it is the first YouTube movement. Like I said, it's a movement that is basically driven by YouTube. So basically, he is putting
right,
these things on his YouTube channel and getting the message out through that. So, like I said, I've looked around and I didn't see any other. So I have not seen a counter argument of one that exists other than what he's talking about. So he's definitely hoping to be similar to Nike or similar to, meaning that having that logo catch on, and they have that "Just Do It" logo, or Sprite, and I forget what Sprite's logo is, or even McDonald's. But he's hoping that it catches on so much that it becomes like almost a mantra for people around the globe. And I actually think it's a brilliant idea, and apparently I definitely want him to come on with you, because y'all will be able to talk forever, because he is something that I didn't even know necessarily existed, which is a quotologist, because apparently he has been studying quotes all his life, and he can pull quotes out of the air like I've never seen anybody's business. So like I said, and I'm talking about quotes from everybody from like Plato to Jesus Christ on up to like modern day people like Biden and Trump. And you're sitting there going like, how do you have that many quotes in your head? So like I said, apparently he's getting these quotes, and I looked up, and most of the quotes, if there were any errors in them, it might have been like a word here, or something that a sentence, not even a sentence, a word here or a punctuation there, but nothing that took away from the meaning of the quote. So like I said, if there were any errors that I saw, and like I said, I'm not saying that I am a quotologist and that I studied his quotes totally, but the only thing I saw might have been some minor errors, and none of them took away from the meaning of the quote. So like I said, whatever the message he was trying to get across from the quote was true, even if there was like a punctuation error, or even if like, a word like "a" might have been missing or whatever like that. But I'm sitting there and I'm just be fascinated to find out who we've got out there. Hey, Jeff might be a quotologist, because Jeff does a lot of quotes as well. So
I think that Jeff is going to be on later on today, because this is where he does his Weed Wednesday show. So he'll be hitting on there. I was just hitting the buttons, all of a sudden that came up.
Popped up. No, I just saw it pop up, and I was thinking, what other quotologists do we have? But I know one person that's a quotologist, and he'll be on Friday, because I was actually bouncing around in StreamYard where we hang out at and everything, and I actually went to the wrong one temporarily, and I saw that, and I remember because I've been on this show a few times, but a person we've got on our team that is a master quotologist in my mind, and of course he's a study of a student, I should say, of the Bible and everything else, is none other than Brother Mike. Because like I said, every time I'm on, Brother Mike is talking about some great things, and he's getting quotes from parts of the world, speaking of us being a global network, that I don't even know about some of these leaders, but I'm hearing him, dropping quotes from like leaders out of Nigeria and places like that. I've actually got to put him in touch with somebody I met yesterday on Clubhouse, because Clubhouse is where I have found some guests and everything.
Yeah, everybody talks about Clubhouse, and I've never even been to Clubhouse.
Yeah, you got to go to Clubhouse. I was on Clubhouse much too late last night, and they were having a cold conversations about relationships. They were actually asking a question that I'm getting ready to ask you, because it was a fascinating conversation that kept me up much too late, and we are actually the opposite ends of what they were asking about, and I will explain what that is in just a second. But there was a gentleman there from Nigeria who apparently was a Uber driver and was shot and lost his eyesight and everything. But he was talking about how his lady love is how he got through this and how he continues to get through this. So he's talking about the power of love and all of that. But he's from Nigeria, and apparently he's a motivational speaker. And I'm trying to think, I think Tommy is his name, but I don't think I've heard Brother Mike mention Tommy. But, and Nigeria is a big country. Even Lagos is a big city, so they don't have to know each other. But I need to find out, one, if Brother Mike knows him, and if he doesn't know him, find ways to connect them. Because I know that Tommy, I know now, is on Instagram, and of course he's on Clubhouse, so he was telling his story. But the issue that they were talking about, and like I said, we're the opposite issues of this. And like I said, I got up, I think maybe around 11 o'clock, and stayed up much too late. I won't tell you how late I stayed up, but with this whole conversation, and the conversation was, and they take different topics, but the topic this time was, are single people, that would be me, or are married people, that would be Nick, happy? So the whole argument was the question of whether single people were happy or whether married people were happy. And there were arguments on both sides. I think that at the end, what was decided was that you have to be happy within yourself, whether you're single or whether you're married or not, but that you have to be happy within yourself is the main conclusion that I was hearing from folks. But, it became a whole conversation about different aspects of single and married. There was actually a young lady that I sent a text to find out if she knows Alexandria, because even though this was a quote unquote African-American room, meaning that most of the moderators in that particular room were African-American, there was a young lady named Ellen who is a Nashville singer, and she's been married for 39 years to her husband. And I think her husband, and she has helped her husband battled cancer and all of that, and they are doing quite well and all. But she was basically saying how even in her marriage, when she first got married, she was having feelings for somebody else, but she did not act on those feelings. And she also had to come to terms with what I was just saying, that she needed to be comfortable within her own skin and not necessarily think that just because she was dreaming or fantasizing about somebody, that it was something that she had to act on. And that's part of her secrets of success and all of that. But I did ask her if she knew Reese, who's a friend of mine, who's a former Nashville singer, or Tiff Merritt. And of course, I did ask her if she knows Alexandria May, but I have not been back on Instagram because sometimes Clubhouse is connected to, well, people on Clubhouse are connecting their Clubhouse accounts to their Instagram accounts and their Twitter and a couple of other accounts. So I've not heard yet her answer as to whether she knows Alexandria May, but it sounds like she's very much involved in that same singer-songwriter community. So I'm having a funny feeling that they know each other, because I've heard Alexandria May talk about the Riemann, I believe it is, but it's a club or space in Nashville, and apparently that's where she practically grew up at, and how she even met her husband and a number of other things. So I'm definitely thinking that they probably know each other, or at least know of each other, but I'm going to find out. And there's one other Nashville type singer, which is my friend Nancy Middleton, that I also want to find out if she knows, because I didn't add that one to my list. But as she was talking, she was very elegant, and she also was up with some ridiculous hour of the morning as well. But definitely it was fascinating when she jumped into the conversation. And like I said, the conversation went all kinds of places, including people even admitting to self-sabotage in relationships. Because, all relationships, we sometimes do self-sabotage and things along those lines. And definitely that's something that goes on. And the other thing that sometimes goes on in life, and this is just something that I was brought up on my show, and I will talk about it even here, is that sometimes we do, you talked about the whole concept of being involved in doing things and trying to bring more and more good content and all of that. And I'm glad to do that. And I'm going to continue to do that. But sometimes we also become what are called people pleasers. And sometimes you find out that you can't do everything for everybody, because sometimes you stretch yourself too thin. So that being said, be careful even when you're doing a lot of things, because you don't want to stretch yourself too thin. Because I definitely found out over this weekend that I can stretch myself too thin at times to times.
Yeah, I'm totally aware of the stretching too thin, and you get involved in way too many projects. But Clubhouse is something I'm definitely going to have to check out. I've heard a lot of people talk about that, and I just don't know much about that. I do know that Raleigh did something very interesting. They took the Bluegrass Festival from Nashville. Yes, and they've secured it in the Raleigh-Durham area. So now we have the Bluegrass Festival all the way till 2024. And I think Raleigh does have to be a little bit more aggressive in terms of, and they've done a good job right now. They landed Apple. They're bringing in 3,000 people in Apple, but they have to be a little bit more aggressive and bring the talent to the Raleigh-Durham area. And I think they're going to end up doing that here. It's just going to take a lot of time. It's just like Tyler Perry isn't going to move his studios from Atlanta to Raleigh-Durham. I mean, it just isn't going to happen. He bought 310 acres in South Atlanta. I don't know if you know that, Mark.
I had heard that he had moved. I mean, I heard he had bought some acres, but the opposite side of what Tyler did, and I actually knew the gentleman that did it, and as far as I know, it's still out there. But the advantage that Tyler had is that he was in Atlanta. Atlanta is a major metropolitan area. I'm not always the biggest fan of Tyler and some of the things he does with some of his films, because some of them, I'm not saying all of them, but some of them sometimes rub me the wrong way, because they seem a little bit too Amos and Andy-ish, meaning a little bit too character-wise and everything. I mean, he's done some other ones that are powerful and historical, and I will give him credit for that. But some of the earlier ones, particularly even while Medina is definitely hilarious and everything, it does sometimes come off too much as a character to me sometimes. But one of the things I was going to add to that is that there is a studio that has gone through many hands, including one that belonged to a family friend, but it does not have the advantage of being in a big metropolitan city, but it still exists. But there is a studio in Yanceyville, North Carolina called, I believe it's called Carolina Pinnacle was the last name that it had. But Frazier Blackwell had that studio. It is actually on a lot of acreage. It's actually got the cabin. It's actually got sound studios and all of that. And the last I heard, I believe a couple of churches were using it up there in Yanceyville. But notice I keep saying Yanceyville, because you think people don't know Raleigh internationally. They definitely don't know Yanceyville, because Yanceyville is a very small town that is on the opposite side of Hillsborough and Orange County and all of
Is
that.
it a television studio? Can we film a television
It
series
is.
there?
They have got all of that. I believe they have all of that equipment there. It is a full studio that exists
Really?
there, and like I said, it is in Caswell County, and Caswell is on the opposite side of Orange County. I remember me and my friend Brett Chambers and a number of others that are in the filmmaking community went there maybe about 10 years ago. My friend Dilsey
Sure.
also went with us, but it was basically like a meet and greet, and it was at the time that Frazier owned the
Right.
studio. The last time I heard, it was actually on the market. I need to double check that because I know at one point some of the not Dolly's people, but I think it was the Tweetsie Railroad people were looking at buying it, but I don't think that ever came through. So as far as I know, that property is still sitting there. It's got what used to be basically, I mean, I hate to put it this way, but I'll just be honest about it. What was probably a plantation house back in the day and everything. It's got that beach cabin that's down there right on the shores of not so much a beach, but like a pond and everything. And it's got like a lot of acreage and things along those lines. Some Hollywood people did come and do some things associated with it. There might have been some, like in all things, there might have been some political differences between people's visions because, the owner may have one vision, the producer may have another vision. So there might have been differences around vision tactics, but it is definitely a jewel there. And like I said, it's not that far from us. So I might need to do some research and go with you down there or maybe some of our other team and see if it is still available. Because like I said, it was just to give you a little history and so folks know that this is an international platform. If you remember the classic B movies, the Carolina Pinnacle Studio is the former De Laurentiis studio. So it is the studio that was making a lot of those B movies back in the day. So it's had a couple of lives and it's definitely been a couple of different things, but it was the old De Laurentiis studio.
Yeah, well, the reason we're asking is we're looking for a studio to film a pilot for Lawyer's Den on. And the thing is, so if you can put on your thinking cap and you find a studio that doesn't charge an arm and a leg. See, the real problem is that the minute we went to some studios years ago here in Raleigh, and they wanted like $100,000 an episode, and I was going like, look, I just want to film a pilot. I don't want to buy the whole plane, So I'm looking for a studio that has a reasonable charge that makes sense that we can run our pilot on Lawyer's Den and maybe even have it as a permanent facility for the show, assuming that we get picked up, which is right now in the works. But in any event, that's what I'm looking for, Mark. So that
would be no problem.
I mean, if it's in Raleigh Durham, it's easier for me, But if it's in Atlanta, I would go to Atlanta. I've filmed actually in Las Vegas and Chicago. Chicago is just way too expensive because everything is union dues. I mean, you got to pay dues. Las Vegas was not that expensive to film, but if there's a smaller studio, because we don't need a huge set, we're just, we need a set that's like, what do they call it, a judge set. I mean, it's not that difficult to put up, So, but the thing is, it's the cameras. In other words, the cameras and the post edits and the sound. And the sound is really the key thing. That unfortunately, when we run everything through StreamYard, we don't have a sound editor, and so the sound can be inconsistent. In a studio, the sound is very consistent. So that's what I'm looking for. It's just going to. Raleigh Durham is challenging when it comes to studios. That's all I can say.
I can believe it's very challenging. It's probably very much challenging because, like you said, the studios have different versions of what they're trying to do and all of that. So I'm sure that it's probably just a headache in a lot of different ways.
There's not a lot of productions that come out of here. I mean, Georgia was very aggressive in getting films and getting television set up, and then you had CNN build their world headquarters in Atlanta, Georgia. So Georgia was very aggressive. North Carolina is not that aggressive when it comes to media.
Well, part of the reason we're not aggressive is we made a tactical error, and I've mentioned that on this show before. But and I know different people have different arguments about it and everything. But I think that when we gave up on the tax credits for our folks in the film industry, that's when they started heading to Georgia. They started heading to Arizona. They started heading to various other cities where. Our good Dr. Anthony is at. They started heading to New Orleans. They started heading to a lot of places that were giving them better breaks. So, if I could sit there and have a conversation with our current that is one of the things that I would be pushing them to do, is to give credits to our movie industry, but also to even our music industry as well, because I think that we've also lost some money in the sense of music, other
Yeah.
things that are out there that we could definitely be using a lot of great connections to get people in here and everything. But unfortunately, it was under one of our past governors, and it wasn't even Pat McCrory and everything. It was several governors back that kind of killed those credits. And I think that that's what severely hurt our film industry, and still continues to severely hurt our film industry.
Right. Yeah. And the thing is, what they found out is that the films also attract a tourism industry.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, there's a video. When they film something in a particular city, it actually attracts a lot of tourism. They did that in Savannah when remember Forrest Gump was filmed there on the square. Then all of a sudden, Mark, a lot of people went to the square to go see where he sat.
Right.
I call it. They wanted to see his bench. So many people were doing it. They actually had to take the bench and put it in a museum. In other words, you can't go see the bench on the square in Savannah, but it brought in this film tourism industry, which does have an effect on people. So, it's something that I think North Carolina does have to consider, as they should try to compete in all forms of ways to boost the economy. But that takes a little change of mindset to want to do that. And you're right, the tax credits are advantageous. I didn't know that much about them, because if you live in a state that has no income tax like Washington or Florida, it's not an issue. Right. But what they do is they actually sell the tax credits, because when you film, you go, I don't need the tax credits. And what they do is they turn around, they sell the tax credits, and they use that to help support the cost of putting the film together. So it actually becomes a very interesting dynamic to do that and start attracting the film industry, if you want the film industry in North Carolina. And you have to compete for it. But right now, I don't see that them doing it. This studio in Yanceyville, I'm going to check out, because the thing is, if there are some studios outside the Raleigh-Durham area that aren't arm and a leg, that would be very interesting if we could just film in Raleigh-Durham. For me, because then I don't have to travel to New York. I don't have to travel to Chicago. I don't have to travel to Atlanta. I don't have to travel anywhere. I go down the street and make everybody else travel here. And I'm okay with that.
I think that'd be a great idea. But a question came up on one of the shows, or maybe it was Clubhouse. I don't remember where the conversation came up with, but it actually was an interesting question. And I think now that I think about it, it might have been on one of my previous shows and everything. And I don't know the answer, but maybe, and it comes back to our international focus and everything. But we've got the Olympics coming up in Tokyo and everything. And of course, they're building different things and all of that. I remember sometime back, I don't remember the year, that the whole state of North Carolina was involved in one of those. Basically, they amount to Olympic trials. They're like the Olympic Games and things of that nature. And we built different things. Of course, they built like probably a hockey stadium, and they built like soccer and things of that nature. Now, some of those things are very common, and they're very used even after the Olympics. Like I can see a hockey rink being used, if not being used by the Hurricanes, definitely being used by like some minor league hockey teams or things of that nature. I can even see the same with basketball courts and with like the soccer fields and things of that nature. But within the Olympics, they also build things like pelodromes, I think they're called, which is where the bicycles have their race and everything. And they build other things that are one-time events. Like they even built, I want to say like a curling thing. And I do think we have a curling association. But I was just wondering, from your own recollection, what happened with those things after those state games are done? And the same thing with the Olympics. Are those things just torn down, or they just sit there waiting for another Olympics in like 30 or 40 years? Or what happens? Because like I said, I do remember them building things, and I'm sitting there going like, okay, this is fantastic. This is totally spectacular. I might even get on my TV, and if I had the money, I'd go to watch the bicycle race. But, it's a certain kind of track, and you don't need that track all the time. So I was just wondering if you had heard anything, or if anybody had any idea of what they do with those things after they build them, if they are one-off bills.
I can tell you here, and you won't like the answer to that. Greece, obviously Greece was one of the founders of the Olympics. I mean, that started in like 700 AD or something like that. Right. So recently they actually had their own Olympics. It cost them billions and billions of dollars to build all the stadiums and facilities for the Olympics. They borrowed heavily to do that.
Uh-huh.
And here's the aftermath. No one uses the facilities. I'm just leveling with you. And
Right.
Greece is heavily in debt. The facilities were basically torn down or they were overgrowth, et cetera. It was unbelievably a huge loss to the country of Greece to have and host the Olympics. And that's the realities of it.
Right.
So unless you can take existing facilities and reposition them, it doesn't make any economic sense to bring the Olympics to your city. It's a big, big loser. And unfortunately, Greece and their citizens have bared the burden of that Olympics for years. Now, I can't tell you about other cities, but I think it depends which city that you go to, because if you have a lot of existing facilities inside your city and you just need to reposition them, that's one thing. If you have to build all this new infrastructure that will only be used one time, it was a bad deal for the country of Greece, and they're still suffering from it today. And that's, unfortunately, that's the reality, because you're right, they build this big stadium and then never use it again. It's not a good deal for the country. It was not a good deal. And then Greece was financially strapped for many years because of that. So not too thrilled with the Olympic Committee for allowing that to happen. Not to say they had much choice, because what happens is Greece puts their bid in, everybody's hyped up about doing it, but the leaders of Greece didn't see that. And so I don't know, I just think it was a bad deal for them.
And that's what I was afraid of. I was afraid that was going to be the case, that these things are built and then unfortunately they just sit there and they sit empty, and maybe they collect grass and weed and other things. But then after a while, you're sitting there going like, we've got to find something to do with it. Okay. And you can't find anything to go on with it and everything. Right. So that was the answer I was somewhat expecting, but hoping I was wrong.
No. Well, here's an answer that's pretty good. We're rebroadcasting now on the International News Network. Okay, so I just checked it because I play around with the Facebook. It's actually a Facebook group. So I want to do a shout out to this group. It has 19,500 members, and we rebroadcast on that. That's one of the social media groups that we rebroadcast, and it goes all over the world. It's called the International News Network. If you haven't joined it, you can actually join it. It's one of the Facebook groups that we rebroadcast through. And this is being rebroadcast right now through that group, Mark, in case you didn't know.
I did not know that, so okay. I'm glad to know that.
The thing is, here's how you do it. This isn't rocket science. First, you join the group. It's called International News Network. Then while you're broadcasting, you press share. And then when you press share, there it is, being rebroadcast on the International News Network with about 20,000 people. Bingo.
And speaking of shares and growth and all of that, I actually met, and actually was through the expo, but she was helping them because analytics is a wonderful thing. And I need to bring Kimberly onto our team and everything, because she's found ways to actually help you, because she's actually doing pushing of events and things of that nature. Okay. And she's actually got a company called Creative Force or something like that. But she is definitely a social media engineer, kind of like what you've been doing and kind of what Ankin is doing. But she is a social media engineer, and she pushes out programming on a regular basis. I want to say that last week she pushed out to like somewhere close to, I want to say somewhere in the neighborhood of 100 or 150,000 people around the globe and everything around that. But definitely she's based in your area. So I need to have you have a meeting with her in Raleigh. She is in Raleigh. She is actually in Raleigh, North Carolina. And she actually got a wonderful gift for, speaking of international, she got a wonderful gift, I want to say for her anniversary, but about 3 or 4 days ago, her husband got her tickets to the U.S. Open. So they surprised her by going to bring her tennis playing buddies, because I think she's part of a local tennis association, and they came on their tennis outfits, and then she was gifted with tickets to the U.S. Open, which will be held in, I believe, August through September. So she was head over heels with that. So definitely want to give her a shout out, but I've got to put her in touch with you in terms of getting this word out to everybody.
Yeah, please do. I also have another meeting at 3:00 with this lady whose parents are from Nigeria, of all places. Okay. And she's a world-class athlete and is a student at Duke University. Believe it or not. Right. So I'm meeting her again today at 3:00, and she was going to help us out with some of the things that I don't know about, which is huge. By the way, my lack of knowledge in this area is absolutely huge. Like Clubhouse, and it keeps growing too, Mark. Like Clubhouse, International News Network, and then there's another one that it ships out to, but I have to go in and figure out did they receive it or not. But the International News Network did receive it. And they're really great, and they rebroadcast all over the world on the IBM TV network. So this way people can see what's going on in the United States, whether or not they want to know what's going on in the United States, or not. But hopefully Steve will get some people on. I'll try to get Rakesh back on again from New Zealand.
He definitely said he's got some guests lined up. I know that I've been talking to some folks as well, and definitely I would love to see Rakesh back, and I'd love to see, of course, Shaquille popped in, and even what's your buddy from Greece? Because it's been a minute since we've seen him, but I'd love to see Spano, I believe it is. Robert.
Oh, he's from Italy. Roberto Sparano. He's actually from Italy. Yeah, right. We're try to get them back on so we get more of the international people.
Yeah, I'd love to get more of that international perspective.
Part of it is that when the world news goes out, they've got to get the invitation so they can get on. I mean, it's so simple as that. But we're going to start adding some more people to the World Edition. In terms of the news, like I said, the big news, of course, is Biden meeting with Putin.
Oh yeah, that's the big news.
It's the big news of the day, and he has the support of the G7, which when they were talking about it yesterday, the G7 represent 50% of all GDP in the world.
Oh, wow.
So the thing is, when they get those leaders together in the G7, now remember it was the G8 and Russia was included.
Right.
Okay, now it's the G7. They kicked Russia out. I mean, so we have a little bit of a, what do you call it, a controversy mark that exists.
Controversy, spat, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, spat, something between Russia and the G7 countries. So because he was kicked out, Biden has to meet with Putin separately. But as I said, Putin, he's met with 5 U.S. presidents. In other words, Putin is a fixture right now in Russia, where our president turns. In other words, he'll go, okay, you're the 3rd president I meet. And if you don't agree with what I say Putin, I'll wait for the next president. I mean, he's going to be around.
Like, I don't care. I'll just wait for the next one.
Yeah, if you don't like what I do, I'll just wait for the next one. Maybe they'll like it better.
But I think they have their own issues because don't they have some things going on with like Ukraine and other things? So they got their own problems as well.
That's a very interesting issue with Ukraine. I mean, Ukraine is moving more toward the West. In other words, they want to be part of they want to be part of the NATO. They want to be part of the European Union. But the thing is, their history is more toward Russia. In other words, when I was growing up, I saw the Soviet Union, and you saw these little dots. There was Ukraine, there was Kazakhstan, and I always thought, aren't these separate countries? Why are they being absorbed like it's just one big country? Well, it turned out they were separate countries. They were just absorbed in this thing called the Soviet Union back then. But Ukraine apparently wants to be more work with more of the European. In other words, they want to be part of the EU more than they want to be part of Russia. And Russia historically wants them to be part of them. So you got a very interesting dynamic because Russia's lost a lot of ground. I mean, they lost.
But it's not strictly an Eastern dynamic because, as you were saying that, I was thinking to myself. So Ukraine is basically the Eastern equivalent of Puerto Rico because we have things here in our country that also would like to have their independence as well. So apparently, there was colonial aspects and colonial powers that are all over the country, including America. So definitely America's had some territories, and some of those territories are like Ukraine. They would like their own independence, or at least more autonomy, because I know there's a difference in Puerto Rico. Some people would like statehood and become the 51st or 52nd state, depending on what DC does. And some of them are like, no, we just want to be independent.
Right, but and the other thing that we have to look for going forward is the powers of these international corporations, like they call it FAG, I think it is, Facebook, Apple, Alphabet, Microsoft, Google, and in today's Mother Jones, which by the way is a communist newspaper I get. A lot of people aren't familiar with it.
No, I'm familiar with Mother Jones.
Okay, I get Mother Jones. All right. Okay, they have some interesting article. One interesting article was Amazon, and Amazon's takeover of the United States or the world. Anyway, what they did is 250 people that worked in government in Washington, D.C. now work for Amazon in various forms of capacity. And so what happens is some of these big multinational corporations are as big as countries today. Yeah. In other words, if you look at Amazon, you look at Apple, their value of $2 trillion is equal or greater than the whole country of Canada. So when you're looking at, guys like Putin, and he's got a nice grip over a bunch of land, the thing is there's a lot of wealth that's being built in intangibles that Putin can't control. As a matter of fact, the most damaging thing that he has isn't nuclear weapons anymore. It's his cyber security attacks, which may or may not be supported by Russia. But the thing is, but they're harbored by them. In other words, so let's say that we have in our country, we decide to create a bunch of people that are going to disrupt Russian rails, Russian infrastructure using the internet. That's not really a fun thing to do, but using ransomware and some of these things. So that's going to be a topic which I'm not an SME on, but I would love to listen to how they're going to discuss how you're going to control it. If they can't control it. In other words,
they can't control that at all. I don't see how you can control that. It's next to impossible to control, and all of that. I know we're getting to wrap up, and I know that Steve always loves his dessert topics and everything. And one of the things I was going to ask you just really quickly and everything is that somebody recently spent a whole lot of money to basically go on a joyride, because that's the best I can tell is that it's a joyride. So somebody, and there's a lot of people that were going to spend this money, but somebody, and they haven't said who because they're not going to announce it till later, spent $28 million to go on a ride up in space, and apparently spend 3 minutes in weightlessness and then come back down. So they're not even going to a planet. They're not going to Mars. They're not going to anything else, but they spent $28 million to go on basically what to me sounds like, and me and Dean were talking about this on the audio podcast that I do, for what amounts to a glorified joyride. Because like I said, you're going up into space, you're going to go spin around for 3 minutes in weightlessness, you're going to buckle back up, and you're going to come back down. So they say a fool and his money. That sounds like a classic case of a fool and his money, because I can think of a lot of things, and even some of the things that we've been talking about on this show, that you could do that would be good for society with that 28 million versus going up on a ride with Jeff Bezos, I believe it's his brother, and one other astronaut, and whoever this, and I'm just going to call him what I think he is, fool that spent $28 million to go up on a joyride.
Well, it goes back, and this, as we're wrapping up, the problem that we have with the tax system in the United States and worldwide, and the lottery system of winning the lottery. And if you win the lottery, in other words, you get lucky, you hit the numbers, you end up with more money than you have cents. And so what happens, this is very unfortunate. You end up with some people today, Mark, that are multi-billionaires. We've had them on our shows before. Centi-billionaires, deca-billionaires. And so the thing is, 28 million to them is like you taking a quarter and putting it in a bubblegum machine. I mean, that's the real problem that you have. And our taxing jurisdictions aren't equipped to handle it. So you end up in that particular situation. So 28 million to them, I agree with you. I mean, it's kind of a waste, but they have so much money that they don't know what to do with it. And that's just the way it is. Well, welcome to the world in 2021, where
I have a suggestion, Nick.
You just got to hit the lottery, Mark. That's all.
No, I have a suggestion. I think we need to write them a letter, and they can invest that 28 million in the Pod TV international broadcast media. So I think we need to write them a letter, and they can invest in us. So I think that's the idea.
Well, that is a possibility. The thing is, 28 million cash infusion would change the whole psychodynamics of what we do. So maybe we should go out for 28 million. That would be a very interesting psychodynamic. That's what Cheddar and Pluto did. But it's better than the 3-minute ride up to space or not. But that just shows you the skewed economic power that some people have on this planet that other people don't, and they don't have access to. And there's a lot of them that do. There's more people that have that economic power than there are chess grandmasters. Seriously.
No, I believe that, and I definitely agree with you. So if you hit that magic button, it'll bring that video up and everything. If anybody is watching and they want to donate $28 million, maybe before he goes off, Nick will give the email or the address. I believe it's Nick at IBMTV.tv or something like that.
Or you can go Nick at nationalpensions.com. They have lots of millions. Unfortunately, it's all wrapped up into people's pensions. I can't use it for media. But anyway, yes, we'll see you tomorrow, or else I think Steve will be back.
Steve will be back tomorrow. I'll be back
Okay,
tomorrow
great.
as well.
All
But
right.
he did say he'll be back. He'll be back from the beach, so we will not see any more beach views. I'm going to have to chastise him about that because he went to the beach. He took his family to the beach. He did not take his fellow news people to the beach. So that's one thing that I'm upset with. And he also did not at least give us the vicarious pleasure of being at the beach. You notice that the times that Steve came on, he was in his place of residence. He did not go onto the beach and at least give us the vicarious pleasure of seeing the beach. So
Yeah,
we're gonna have to
we'll
chastise
have
him
to
about that.
beat him up on next time, and we'll see him tomorrow. All right, we'll see you. Bye bye.
See you. Bye.
Okay.